questions or any thoughts, then please just chime in as we sort of go through it. But what amazes me is the level of detail that should really go into these plans, and the real background thinking that you need to do. And that then helps you when you're talking to prospective funders. It helps you to get your story right and really be able to get them to understand what it is you're trying to do. So if we go to page, not the executive summary, page 5. Now, I think this page is quite interesting because it's all about thinking about your underlying business philosophy. You know, why are you in it? Why are you doing this? What are you wanting? What's special about your particular company? So I know Andy does. I'll pick Andy as an example because I know he's doing a microbrewery company, and it's thinking about what's going to be special about that particular company. What's going to be its primary selling point once it gets beyond being a tiny micro business to when you're starting to expand it. And I suppose that's the other thing as well. The government are very keen that small businesses and micro businesses do start expanding, because that's really where the basis of our economic growth is going to come from. It's not just having millions and millions of tiny businesses run by one person, but it's having millions of businesses which actually employ people.
Generating employment.
Exactly, and it's sort of, and to do that you need to grow and expand. And the question is, if you do that in an unstructured way, it can all become very, very difficult to manage, and that's quite often when small businesses collapse, because they just haven't got the infrastructure there to help them expand and develop. So this first page is mainly about really thinking about the industry that you're joining, the industry that you're entering, what's specifically good about your business, where your niche is going to be, and what you're offering that's different to what everybody else is offering. So that takes a lot of thinking about. And I think the other thing to say about business plans is that they take a lot of thought, and it's probably it's not the most boring bit that you have to do, but it's a bit where you actually have to sit down and spend real time. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, what gets you into wanting to run your own business is because you tend to be quite dynamic and wanting to get on and just do and make it happen. Whereas this bit is sort of taking a step back and actually making sure you sit down and sort of get on with that.
Lots of plate spinning going on just now with me, so it's
Yeah.
finding the time to actually get down, but I know I need to do it.
Yeah, and that's the big problem, is everybody says, I don't have the time to do it, but it's having to carve that time out. I mean, from an academic perspective, it's the same thing. We're supposed to write research papers and things, and we look at it and say, well, when have we got time to do this? But it's about having to try and make that time somewhere. And that's why I'm saying this is the most difficult bit to do. And it's probably the bit where if you want help or support from people, it's this bit that you need help and support. Even if it's just people making you sit down and get on and do it, and somebody that you can use as a sounding board to get your ideas down. So that's the first page, and that's really thinking about your business's context, its context within the wider industry. The next one is thinking about the products and the services that you're going to be offering, and whereabouts your competitive advantage is, but also what your disadvantage might be. So it's trying to be really honest about what you're good at and what you know is going to be competitive and is going to hopefully make money and help secure your place in the market, but also what could be disadvantageous. So for example, if you've got a photography business and you're a lone photographer, that could be a disadvantage in terms of you might get too much work, and then what are you going to do? And how are you going to cope with demand and that sort of thing? So again, that's something quite interesting to think about. And also at this point, you start thinking a little bit about, pricing, and how is the industry as a whole pricing itself? How are you going to fit within that pricing structure? So a lot of this is about researching, really, and doing a thoroughly good job of the research. The next sort of section you have to think about and cover is marketing plans. And again, this is something that not many people, you think, oh yeah, I'll just put something up on the website, I'll just put some adverts into newspapers. But it's really thinking about having a cohesive marketing plan that you can afford and you can make happen, and being able to articulate that. because that's what funders want to see. They want to see that you are going to be marketing your business, your product, and how are you going to market that in an extremely expensive marketing world. And that's all things to think about, very much so. There is a whole load of sort of secondary sources that might be an idea to have a look at. One of the best places to go for help with researching different businesses and businesses in your industry is the British Library. They've got a massive business portal. There's one down in London. I usually go to the one in London actually because I believe it's easier to get to, because the British Library is right next to King's Cross Station. But there is one at Thorpe Arch which you can use as well. But if you go in there, they have all of the data. They have everything in there about every industry in the UK and abroad. And it's a really great place to go and do some researching. The staff are really, really helpful. And it's about getting that grounded research done. But it all takes time, but it's having to carve that time out to do that. And I think what's quite good about this page is it does give you really good guidance about the sort of things you should be looking for when you're doing that research. So it goes on, and it gives you a whole load of sort of areas you need to have a think about. This one's quite interesting. On page 8, it says thinking about how the following will affect your company. One of them is changes in technology. So again, for photography, it's really about thinking forward. All right, so this is where we are now in terms of digital photography, but what's the next thing going to be? And is that next thing going to be something that you want to engage with? And if you do, does that give you a competitive advantage? Or if it comes along and you don't engage, or you can't afford to, does that become a disadvantage? In which case, what are you going to do? So again, that's about researching, and it's about really trying to find out, what are the next developments going to be. And with the brewery industry, it's about regulations. I can imagine government regulations, and where might those be going? So it's looking at the past history and saying, okay, this is the past history of where government's moving legislation in terms of alcohol consumption, that sort of thing, and so therefore what might happen in the future.
There's lots of food hygiene, different regulations as well that keep coming out. And different pub companies want different information from you all the time and new information.
Yeah, and it's about keeping track of that, because again, it could put you at a massive disadvantage if you haven't done a bit of horizon looking and a bit of thinking about, well, this has happened in the past, so what might they ask from me in the future? And it's just trying to think in those terms rather than this is the here and now, so I'm complying with all this. You need to be thinking slightly more ahead and having a guess at, an educated guess at what might be coming along next. The publishing business I know very little about actually. At all. It's not a sort of an area I've been involved in. So I suppose technology is something that...
Technology is an issue, except it seems that technology is not taking off the way people.
Oh, that's interesting.
People still like.
Yeah, and there's that interesting juxtaposition. How does... because I was just thinking about that horrible book that came out a couple of years ago, 50 Shades of Grey, which was a completely online book. Does that sort of thing affect you? Do you engage with online publishing?
We do engage with online publishing, but one, we don't sell very much that way.
Right.
And two, most people actually don't read books.
Yeah.
You can't lend somebody an electronic book. You can't leave it. You
Yeah.
can't leave an old book in a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
You can't pick up a book. You
Yeah.
can't pick up any book.
Yeah.
So the whole, and the other thing is that young people actually learn to read on real books, because you can't give a 2-year-old a Kindle.
You'd be surprised how quick my 2-year-old could pick it up.
Would be an
Although
X-Kindle
we do
very
have
quickly.
proper books at home.
Yeah.
We do
But
like reading with proper books.
But it is surprisingly young people are still preferring to buy the books on paper rather than on Kindle.
Do you think that's
They don't
likely...
need batteries to read it.
That's very true. Do you think that's likely to continue, or do you think as successive youngsters who are growing up more and more in a digital page?
It may become more specialised. I mean, there are more people who are sort of making books in boxes and so on. I don't know, but I certainly think there's a good proportion of people's Christmas gifts for books. And I think that people don't think the voucher to buy a book online is the same as giving somebody a real present. So there's a whole big giving issue.
Okay. Oh, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, you can write it, but
yeah.
Yeah, well, you can, yes, in a sense.
a real book.
It can be personalised. So it's not going away from paper in the nearest part.
What about, I'm just thinking about sort of like the storage of books, people storing books. When you look at housing accommodation, houses are actually getting smaller.
Yeah, Kindle takes your book away from you after so long, so it's not...
Do they?
Yes. I mean, the biggest reader of Kindle books is mainly people going on holiday.
Yes, that's what I take.
And that's basically driven by
Weight.
weight. So you can take 50 books with you and sit on the beach and read your 50 books, which would hit your weight restrictions in no time at all. The market basically is it's about 50-50, and they don't think electronics has taken anything away from the paper.
I was just interested because recently we were looking around some new flats, brand new builds, and they're tiny. And from personal perspective, I got lots of books, and I was looking around thinking, well, there's nowhere for me to put my books. Yeah.
We have the same problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure I read an article where, based on last year, there was more books being sold compared to last year, and less Kindles being sold compared to last year.
Yes, I think there has been that may be true. I haven't sort of kept up with it, but yes, my instincts tell me that it is moving away from the electronic
That
books.
shift. Yeah. Well, I suppose also because you're on computers. Most people are on computers all day at work.
It's a relief, isn't it?
It never felt quite right, snuggling up in bed to read a chapter of your book before you go to bed, and it's on an electronic device, which is quite bad for you.
They freeze in the dark.
That's very true. So it's things like that, really. Changes in the economy, changes in your own area that you're going to. And a lot of that is about doing the historical research and then thinking through, just as we've just done then. And again, a lot of these things are so much better done with other people, rather than trying to do it on your own and having other people to discuss some of these ideas around. And it also makes it a bit more fun, I think. And then when you move on to page 9, it's thinking about what sort of customer base. So we've just been talking then with publishing about maybe the types of customers that you might be getting. For Ainsley Ales, what's going to be your target population?
It's everybody really, but specifically the young adults.
Right.
So sort of 25 up to 40-year-old are really going on to craft ale and rail ale in quite a big way just now. So
is it the hipster culture? My son was telling me all about the hipsters.
A few phrases, but that's certainly the age range.
Yeah.
But not just men, women in there are definitely trying a lot of rail ale there. So that's
Is that something? Is that a new demographic? Women particularly drinking?
Maybe in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, maybe with CAMRA, Campaign for Ale Ale. Their figures show that they're the fastest growing demographic who are signing up to CAMRA to become a member of CAMRA. The females in that age range.
So you have to have prettier labels in future.
Yeah, well that's what I thought of that with my logo. It supposedly appeals to females a little bit as well.
Yeah, that slightly feminine side
a little
of
bit,
craft ales.
Yeah.
So things like that's what's interesting about thinking about.
Pink bonnet, there you go.
Sorry?
Pink bonnet.
Yeah.
So it's things like that, and just really thinking through who those people might be. Then when we come on to page 10, this gives you some hints and ideas about how to put together your competitor analysis. Really thinking through who your competitors are, what they're offering, what you're hoping to offer. Now, a lot of this information you can get from a database called FAME. It's Financial Analysis Made Easy. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but basically it covers every single company in the UK, both tiny micro businesses all the way through, and you can do an analysis of your competitors by area, by region, by town, or by size. So, for example, ACLs, you can say, okay, I'm hoping to have maybe 3 employees. So, what other microbrewery businesses are there in this region?
Just let you input the information.
Yeah, and it will enable you to sort of sift through and target your competition and really look at who those competitors are. We'll do the same with publishing any industry. It enables you to do it by industry. And I know when our MBA students were doing a project for Phil Black in Tarts and Titbits. I don't know if you know Tarts and Titbits, along Gilly Gate. Yeah, the shop at the corner there. And they did a competitor analysis on small delicatessens, and some really interesting data came out from it.
Where did you get the data from? Because I know we're not doing it.
It comes through from. Do you have to file your returns and things
Not really, no.
with Company House?
No, because we're set up as a partnership, not as a
Right.
limited company.
Oh, I don't know. I'll go and see if you're. I'll take the name
I
of your
doubt
business and see if you're
well,
on
if we
there.
are there, I'll be shocked.
Well, I think it's any business that has to file with Company House, I believe.
And how up to date is it? Because
Very.
obviously I'm just...
This year.
Right.
Yeah, the data's available. Yeah, it's as soon as everything's uploaded annually, then the database is updated. But it is it's a brilliant database. And if you need any help with that, we can help you. We have access to it, which was quite good. So this sort of table on page 11, that's where you would get a lot of that data from something like Fame. I think probably also if you go to the British Library, you'll be able to get access to it from there as well. But we are hoping to do a small course at some point on using Fame and where you get this competitor analysis information from, the data from. And again, it's like really hard work, but it's really worth doing, because when you go for funding, then being able to cite this information to future funders makes them think, you've actually done your homework and you know who your competitors are and in what sort of areas they're strong and what areas they're perhaps weaker than you. So
This is almost a SWOT analysis.
it is, yeah. It's very similar. It's a bit more structured, I think, and it's sort of trying to get you to think about specific things. But yes, very similar to a SWOT. So, I don't know where we are. Where are we on time? Is this all right with everybody? Okay. Then when you come to page 12, that's starting to think about things like your strategy. So you've outlined your marketing strategy, you've thought about your niche, you've thought about your competitors. So, overall, how are you actually going to go about setting this business up? And I suppose, sorry, I forgot my name again. And I suppose for you, particularly thinking about, leaving full-time work, leaving work and actually making the business more of a full-time proposition, having that very strong strategy at least gives you something to work within and work towards, because it's quite hard otherwise, I think, if you just come out of somewhere and you've got no structure and sort of a clear idea of how you're wanting to move things forward. So, and within your strategy, you're thinking about things like how you're going to promote your stuff, so that will come from your marketing plan, what sort of budget you might need in order to do that setup, your pricing, so it's bringing all of those elements together that you've thought about over the past few bits. Location, how you're going to distribute, I suppose that's quite important for you, Andy, your distribution channels. As I was saying in my email, I noticed that Phoenix are now selling your beer, which is interesting.
There's not too many breweries with Phoenix either, so it's quite amazing.
Yeah, very curious actually. So it's those sort of things. So what other distribution channels might be open to you that not too many people are making use of at the moment? And getting in and trying to find those.
But I thought this issue is the cost of distribution.
Yes. Yeah, and it's
Big barrels of beer are not a cheap thing.
Yeah. So I think do you do it in bottles?
Yeah, bottles.
Yeah.
And the casks. So Cost Cutters have just started selling both bottles as well, which I produce. But it's primarily me that distributes it. So it's ANCLs is still a one-man band. So I'm delivering. Well, I deliver in bulk to Phoenix, for example, and to Cost Cutters.
Right. So that's something you really need to start having a think about. Is how you're going to go around about that distribution as it becomes bigger. And I suppose for you, the big worry is if it becomes bigger too quickly. It's how you, because as soon as you start not being able to deliver to customers, particularly big customers, then
Yeah, I would have to use lots of wholesalers. But like Matthew Clark, for example, I would have to deliver into one of their warehouses, and then they would distribute it as well. But they would obviously take their cut out of that as well.
Yeah, so it's thinking about that distribution network, and as it gets bigger, very rapidly, hopefully, having that in mind, because then when you're in place, you're able to say, right, okay, I've thought about this, I know how much it's going to cost, and this is the way I'm going to do it. So looking at those alternatives. Sales forecast, of course, how much you expect to sell when you need to sell it. The next section is all about the operational plan, and that's really thinking through, I suppose if you're a photographer, for example, it's thinking through the legal side of things, the legal environment. I mean, you need to check out what sort of insurances you actually need. What are the chances of somebody suing you because they don't like the photographs? I don't know the things that go behind that, but really thinking through what sort of legal environment you're joining. Yeah, there's all of that as well to consider. I suppose that's the same for you as a trade. I presume you have trademarks.
We haven't trademarked, but we do have a
How big is your publishing business?
It's growing. I mean, we overcommitted this year. We have about 20 books. We're having that next year. We can't sustain.
Okay. Is that because you can't afford to bring more people in to do work, or don't have the equipment?
It's partly that, and partly the fact that there's really only one distributor in the country left, which is Waterstones.
Right.
We're hooked around basically doing the distribution yourself through authors.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that sounds quite an interesting business. So it's basically thinking, and not all of these sections will apply to all businesses. So it's about going through and saying, well, does this really apply to me, or does it not? And then if it doesn't, you just take it out and don't worry about it. But there will be places that you think, yeah, actually, that's going to be quite an important thing to do. Management. Now, management and organisation is quite interesting. Because although many of you are very, very tiny businesses, we've just been for a meeting with Kyra Women's Project, which they're hoping to become a social enterprise. So at the moment they're a charitable organisation offering support to women, but they're hoping to become a social enterprise. So they're moving more into becoming a business, not a non-profit making business. What's quite interesting about them is they've now been open for 2 years, and their management structure, the way they manage the organisation, is now seriously creaking, and it's likely to collapse in the near future if they grow much bigger, much quicker. And it's all to do with bottlenecks in their decision-making communication processes, because they have a lot of volunteers. And at first it was easy because it was just one person who used to communicate with everybody. And then as they've expanded so rapidly, it's still that one person still trying to do all of that work. So they've been quite an interesting sort of case study of somewhere that's grown rapidly that hasn't thought about the management system that's underpinning all that they do. And again, it's something that's really useful to be able to talk to funders about, that you've thought about how this business is going to be managed, and if it goes to the next stage, how that next stage will fit in. Phil Black is, again, another really interesting example of a one-man business that is growing, and he has given no thought whatsoever to how he's going to manage that growth. So he was going through a phase where he was at work 7 days a week, basically, trying to keep on top of everything. He was sort of like, well, that's maybe not what you should be doing. It's thinking about the staff you have, how you can upskill them, and all of those sort of things. So, although this seems a long way off, it is really worth thinking about it, and thinking about how that system, how you're going to grow it, once your business starts growing, and what that's going to look like. And I suppose it's the same as having, thinking about distribution networks and things. You might not need it now, but if you've already thought about it, then when you reach that point where you think, actually we need some help here, you've got the plan there, and you're not having to just run by the seat of your pants trying to catch up.
Growth is one of something consulting, because I'm doing some work with the law firm that's growing 50% per annum.
Wow.
They have issues of growth.
Yes, and growth itself can actually end up being the downfall of a business.
There are some standard places. The first problem is the first employee.
Yes.
And then it's when you get to about 4 or 5 when you actually have to put somebody in charge of those employees.
Yeah.
And there are some break points that you can identify which are, you have to have enough to carry an overhead.
Yes,
At each
absolutely.
of those break points.
Yeah.
And how you're going to fund actually having someone manage who is essentially not a producer anymore.
Well, exactly, and it is that move away from having everybody who's involved actually producing whatever it is you're doing, to suddenly realising actually we need somebody who's going to be a non-producer but will keep the things ticking.
And the other one is going from 1 room to 2 rooms, from 2 rooms to 2 floors, from 2 floors to 2 offices. Those are all other issues where communication and management control are really, really vital.
So it is thinking through those things, and although it all seems a long way in the distance, to have actually started thinking about it, I think gives funders a bit more confidence in the fact that you are thinking about how your business might expand, how that expansion might look, what key people you see in terms of those expansions, and what you need to employ to make that happen. So I think that's a good point. And then you come down to, if we get up to page 2021, this is all the finance stuff, which is all the horrible stuff, the financial plan, loss prediction, monthly profit loss projections, 4-year profit projections, all of those things. Yeah, but when you start doing those financial figures, that's when all the other things, like thinking about the operations plan, that's when it all comes into play, really. Because it is about, okay, so 4 years' time, you see yourself making this much money, but how are you going to do that? How are you going to manage that? How are you going to resource it? So I think doing that financial plan at the end really makes you think about the bits before, and you pull those into your financial plan. So, for example, having to employ a manager to look after 4 producers, that should be in your financial plan, and how much that's going to cost, and the overhead that will go to the business. So, the financial plans, and then that's it. You're done. Easy peasy. As I said, not all of this applies to everybody, and if you want a soft copy of it, I've got some business cards. Please just email us, and we can send you through a soft copy for you to use. And if you need any help, then please just get in touch. This is stuff that we want to do as a business.